In the spotlight tonight is Canadian hockey star Sheldon Kennedy. After overcoming years of abuse and addiction, the former NHLer has become a vocal supporter for those who continue to grapple with similar issues. He took the time to sit down with us last week and share his experiences. Sheldon Kennedy, welcome. You know, I want to talk to you about mental health and what you're doing to change hockey culture, but I really want to start with your story, which is well known. You have been very open about the abuse you suffered, and I know that you once said that I had to say something or I was going to die. How bad did the shame get? How bad did the drug abuse get when you were at your lowest?
Well, first of all, thanks, Travis, for having me and having these conversations. And I think, you know, one of the things that's really, I believe, a little bit of a myth is the impact of any form of abuse, any form of discrimination and neglect, and you know, and I felt that, and I think sometimes the impact is invisible, and for me, it came out in different ways. It started to paint a picture in different ways, and it painted a picture in my life through addiction, and we all know that addiction is very ugly, and that was the case in my life, but also, you know, suicidal thoughts. And I think, you know, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know how to tell anybody. I couldn't explain why I felt the way I felt, because everybody thought I was supposed to be happy because I was playing in the NHL, and the reality is I wasn't. And so, you know, that's where I got, and thankfully I made the right choice to tell somebody, and they believed me, and I think them believing me was probably more important than me telling.
So I wonder how you really dug yourself out of that hole, because for some people, for a lot of people, it can be a cycle and you can get lost in that.
Well, I've been in recovery now for 19 years. That said, you know, my life started being complicated with the law. I was arrested, you know, when I was 16 for an impaired driving. Thank God I did not hurt anybody. You know, so that's where my life was. I mean, I was in long-term mental health hospitals, many different psych wards, 7 different treatment centers, high-end treatment centers. And that's what it took for me to get any type of recovery. So, you know, but recovery was, you know, the way I was looking at it before was, you know, I thought, well, you know, I'll maybe talk about, you know, some of the things. I'll make everybody happy that's around me, and I'll go to treatment. But the reality is, you know, I really needed to own my part. And what I mean by owning my part is that, you know, because I was hurt, and because I was hurt by Graham James, sexually abused by him. My father was, you know, I grew up in a very violent home as well. So, you know, I grew up running away from my feelings and running in a way that I didn't know how to. That was my way of you know, of expressing my hurt. And so, you know, I think at the end of the day, you know, I needed to really own the fact that, you know, because of the way I lived my life, because of the way that I was set up to live my life, I had wreckage in my past, which means, you know, I treated people, I had anger, I had a lot of fear. You know, my addiction didn't have me showing up at, you know, my daughter's birthday, things like that. And there was lots of that stuff. And, you know, I really needed to own that. And, you know, I really needed to understand that, you know, as much as other people played a huge part in the way that I was living my life and hurt me in a significant way, I did have a role. But I also learned, and you know, and I think, you know, I had to hang around with people that had found a way out of this, that had found a way to live in recovery. And because, you know, a lot of times, you know, I think I had so many failures in my life. And even though I played in the NHL, I still felt like a failure because, you know, I'd never lived, you know, I never lifted a weight or rode a bike in my life. I'd never given myself a chance to be the best I could be. You know, I was arrested, I was in treatment centers, and just every part of my life was a failure. So, you know, 7 treatment centers and psych wards, you feel like a failure too. Like, yeah. I can't even get recovery right. So for me, I needed to hang around with people, and I needed to get to the point where, you know, I did not know how to live in recovery. I knew nothing about it, and I had to really, just get to that humble, humiliating place to be able to start climbing that ladder, and it takes time.
I have lost friends to addiction as well, and when I was talking to them, close to losing them, they said the same thing. They said that they felt like a failure as well. If there is anybody watching this right now that may be in that spot, what is your advice to them to get out of that hole like you did?
Well, and I appreciate your honesty there. And I think, if anybody's watching this, I think, if there's a lesson to be learned is just don't give up. Like there was many times that I could have thrown in the towel. And I think, after 7 treatments, I want to get it. I want to get it. And I think, the people that I know, very few people ever get it the first time they try it. But you know what they do get? The seed is planted when they first admit the fact that, this is a problem in my life and I want something different. And we can't do it alone. And as heavy as that phone feels sometimes, whether it's 5,000 pounds or whatever, we need to find a way to pick it up. We need to find a way to ask for help. And I don't think we have to think that we have all the answers, because the reality is if we knew a lot about recovery, we'd already be living in it. But the reality is we need to ask for help, and we don't have to have the answers. Just, be vulnerable. And take that risk to be vulnerable, and take that risk to trust, because those are 2 things that I think are critical to start the journey.
I know that you have made it your mission really to help people that are struggling, and that is work that you are doing with the Respect Group. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the Respect Group came out of, I was Newsmaker of the Year in 1997 in our country, and I really felt to myself that I really haven't done anything. All I've done is told my story. So I looked at some of the other recipients over the past years, and there was Terry Fox and Rick Hansen, and I thought, well, I'm going to put a pair of rollerblades on and rollerblade across this country and try to have some conversations around issues that weren't real popular and were carried a significant amount of fear and worry and anxiety and stress. And so, one of the things that I think really I felt strongly about is that, what I learned on that journey is that prevention is our best is the best way to protect not only our communities, but our children and ourselves. I feel that perpetrators, whether it's sexual abuse or any forms of abuse, they prey upon communities' ignorance and indifference. And the more that we can build a confidence and a language and our ability to communicate in this space, the stronger we're going to be together. Because, when I grew up, I heard that, be careful of that white van that's cruising around town, because they're going to get you. In a lot of the cases, we've done, thousands of child abuse investigations. I mean, 95% of the children, the victims know their abuser, and over 50% of those kids are abused by a parent or caregiver. So, stranger danger in a lot of cases, isn't always the case. So, our best defense is knowledge. Keep the eyes on those in front of us, and making sure that we're communicating and we're out front, and this issue isn't hidden. And I think what we know is the impact is real. I mean, over 80% of adults in treatment centers and detox centers have disclosed early childhood abuse in their past. So, when we look at that and we see the destruction, that comes with it, Respect Group was critical, but we couldn't have done a good job with that unless, because I can't go out and talk to people about how to walk the walk and, how to live in recovery and how to get out of these ugly places unless I found a way out of it myself. And to me, that was critical. So living in recovery, trying to do the right thing to, make sure I wake up every day and make sure that, I'm in a good spot so I can carry that message for others and show them that, these things are possible. And keep it simple, right? To me, keep it simple. And I'm proud of Respect Group. I'm proud of what we've done, but never possible unless I got sober.
The NHL Players Association announced this First Line program. It's meant to support mental health of players and families as well. What do you make of the program, and how much progress do you think has been made when it comes to talking about this issue within the league?
I think it's a great start. And I think it's available. I think when I hear this, I think what's important about this is acknowledgement. There's an acknowledgement that that these NHL players, which in a lot of young people's minds and within the fan base, look at most professional athletes, not just in hockey or movie stars or people that wear capes, and they don't struggle in the space. And I think so. It was key to acknowledge it. I think that the other piece is that it's about being available to all players. I think that we can do a better job. And I think, as we evolve, I think the NHL, or not just the NHL, but I think that, in sports in general, I think that they can do a better job at making sure that the message is resonating with those that are just starting the game, those below them, and I think that is huge because, they are the ones, those leagues and those players, they are the ones that are in a lot of these kids' minds, the ones that they're listening to. And so, to me, about acknowledging it at a union, at a PA level, but also at an NHL level, at a league level, and to be able to communicate that message, I think is probably the next step and a critical step because, as we all know, Travis, addiction is, riddling our streets, our communities, people's lives, most importantly, families, and and so is mental health. And to me, I don't differentiate addiction and mental health. I think it's all one. And at the end of the day, if we want to get better in this, if we're impacted this way, we need to be able to practice it. We need to be able to prioritize it. And, I think my mental health, my, just living in recovery, if I don't make it my number one priority in my life, I know where it takes me. I won't have any of the good things that I have in my life. I've got 2 young children today, a beautiful a partner, and, and a life that I can, enjoy and smile again. And those are the gifts of recovery that we can't lose sight of.
Toxic masculinity and, breaking down kind of bro culture or locker room culture and the locker room code is something that you've also talked about. Do you think that is happening in hockey? And if it is, do you think it's happening fast enough?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think, Travis, when we look at all of these, I think there's a huge amount, there's many issues that encompass, I believe, culture. And yes, we have to address them all, and I've talked about it a lot. I've talked about systemic culture, and I believe that, yes, there is a systemic culture there. And I think, it doesn't rely on any individual. I think what happens is that there's been a culture that's been built over many, many generations. And unless there's action, unless there's a intentional shift, and an intentional practice on a daily basis to change that culture, it's never going to change. So, I think that, when we look at these issues, and the way that I've talked about them anyway, is that, number one, we have to accept the fact that the culture that is in front of us, that we're in right now, needs to change. Yeah. And to me, how do you go about that? Well, Rome wasn't built overnight. But if we go back to mental health and recovery, it's about acceptance, and I think that's the number one. So if we can accept the fact that, okay, this is where we're at, and I think there's been pieces of it, but I don't believe, and I'm not quite sure it's 100% believed. But I think, if we can get to that point, I think then we can start, chipping away at all of the issues that are critical to creating a healthy culture, and, making sure that everybody feels that they belong and that everybody feels that they're a part of something, and then we can enjoy, the way forward. But I think, until we get to that point, I don't think that we are going to grow the game the way that we all expect it to grow. Yeah.
And I know that you're going to be continuing to work on many of these fronts. I can't let you go without asking you about this season. Some Canadian teams doing really well right now, Winnipeg, Vancouver. What are your predictions?
Well, you know, I am a Manitoba guy, and you know, I know Mark Chipman, and he was you know, one of the leaders, and you know, he came out after the incident that was, you know, the pressure that was on after the Chicago incident, and was one of the leaders in bringing respect to the NHL, respect hockey, and that whole initiative. So, you know, I'm cheering for them. I think they need a winning season in that province for all their fans and for that team. So, go Jets right now.
Go Jets right now. All right, Sheldon Kennedy, let's end right now. All right, we will see.
Hey, you like that? They kind of left an opening there, right?
He left an opening, indeed.
Yeah.
Sheldon Kennedy from my hometown of Calgary, Alberta. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Travis.